Good evening, everyone. Hi, this is Sherry Sims, founder of Black Career Women's Network, and thank you for tuning in for our first professional development series, Branding You in your for your professional success. Sorry about I was so late getting on. I had some technical difficulties. For those of you who know how to use Google Hangout, we know it can be a challenge. So I just wanted to share that with you guys in terms of the reason why I'm late. But here I am. So let's talk about branding. One of the things I want to share with you first is that social media is all around us, everywhere we go. Twitter, Facebook, Pinterest, Periscope, the new and latest craze in terms of video. You also have your, not just your Periscope, you have Meerkat, you have your Instagram. So tonight really is about sharing the basic steps on how to use these tools for your own professional success. Some of these tools do have specific reputations, but we want to change the mindsets about these things and show you ways in how you can use these tools to really find professional success for yourself, whether you're working for a company or working for yourself. There's ways that you can use these tools and maximize them for visibility and also for marketability for your next job, and also for if you want to change careers. So for those of you who are viewing from our website, if you look right next to you, we have the actual slides right there for you, which is Branding You for Success. So I want for those of you who are viewing to follow along with me for these slides. This is how we're going to go in and we're going to share this information in terms of being able to share the information about how to brand yourself. The first thing the question I want to ask for you viewers, and make sure that you can tweet your questions. And for those of you who are in the Hangout, feel free to use the Q&A box to do that. Since I'm solo tonight, you can tweet your questions. I got my phone ready, got my iPad, so I can answer your questions, or even Facebook those questions if you want to. But for those of you who are actually using our slides that we have on the website, please follow those along as we go through the slides tonight. So the one thing I want to ask you all first is, what do you feel like branding is? And we're going to go through that. For those of you who don't know who I am, again, I'm Sherry Sims, founder of Black Career Women's Network, also your career empowerment coach. So we're going to go through the slides here and have you share this information. The first slide actually is just our coverage, just saying about branding you for professional success. And our next one is just an introduction of who I am for those of you who don't know. Yes, my hair is different. I cut it off, so it's all naturally short. I mean, it's all natural and short, but it's still me. But the next slide we're going to go into is the first slide, and let's talk about what is personal branding. What really is personal branding or professional branding? And they kind of intertwine together. So let's talk about what they are. I have a definition on the slide that says personal branding is defined by how we market ourselves to others. Individuals differentiate themselves by articulating their unique value, propositioning it by leveraging it across platforms with a consistent message and an image to a specific goal. So just think about that for a minute as you take notes about tonight's webinar in terms of what does that mean? What does it mean to have a personal brand? Well, it's a message. It's something you want to convey about who you are, right? And if it's from a professional standpoint, you definitely want to make that clear. We had a call earlier today for our Real Career Talk call talking about how are you perceived from your organization? How do they see you as you see yourself? And your branding can help you with that perception of how you're being seen in your organization, or maybe how your brand is being perceived from people who are viewing your product or your service. So these are things to think about when it comes to what is personal branding, and it really is about defining how you want to market yourselves to other people. How do you want to be perceived? And what are you going to do to make sure that you are giving off the right perception to the people that counts most, that you wanted to build a relationship with, do business with, whether it's your boss to be promoted. So making sure that you are conveying the right message of who you are as a professional through how you market yourself. Because social media is something that a lot of employers do follow and they watch. So why not do it the right way? And learn what that means, because it can build a great reputation for you And there's ways to use it to actually set you up as an expert. And we'll go into that a little later on the slides. The next slide is talking about, here's a statement that I have found from Jeff Bezos, which is the CEO of Amazon. And he says, your brand is what other people say about you when you are not in the room. Powerful statement. Okay. And don't we all think sometimes when we're in a place and we're conversating with people and we think, well, what is that? I wonder what they're saying about me when I walked over to the other side of the room. And don't say you haven't thought about that before if you were in a public setting or in a conversation with someone at a social setting or even at work, because you do think about that. But if you're being consistent in how you convey your message to people, then you won't worry about that. But that's just something I want you guys to think about, is that your brand is what other people say about you when you are not in the room. So just wanted to share that. On our next slide, we have talking about why have a personal brand? Why have a personal brand? Why even bother with having a personal brand or professional brand? For some people, I think, well, I've been successful without it all this time, so why do I have to have one now? Well, needs change, life changes, and you do overall as you grow. And not only that, we're not saying that you have to follow all of the industry trends, but if you see that this is something that actually is going to be able to help you take your career to the next level, it's something you really need to take into serious consideration. So why have a personal brand? 4 reasons. 1, it shows expertise. It can give you credibility. It can create trust. And it also can build the right perception if you allow it to in the right way. So those are really good 4 reasons why you need to think about, expertise and credibility and trust and perception as things that you need to think about when it comes to, building a personal or professional brand. You're going to hear me say personal or professional brand a lot. And I know you're probably thinking, what's the difference? One's work and one's personal. But when we start talking about the different types of social media, you'll see why I'm saying personal and professional here in real close. So let's think about this already, because whether you believe it or not, on our next slide is what we're talking about now. You already brand yourself, right? Which is slide number 6 for those of you who are keeping up with this on your page. You're already branding yourself. You do it every day, and you do it with your family. You do it at work. And let's talk about some of these things from the slide and why you brand yourself. First, with your resume during job interviews, you brand yourself. Your interactions with other people, how you engage in social media. We're going to talk about that. And then how are you choosing to project yourself to other people? How are you choosing to do that? So those are 4 important reasons why to think about. You're already branding yourself. And here's a good example. You're at a family reunion and Uncle Joe comes to the family reunion, and everybody knows Uncle Joe likes to have a nice little drink or two, right? So we already know he's going to be tipsy at the family reunion, right? Well, that's part of, people already expect that of him because that's what he does, right? That's part of his brand. Silly as that may sound, but that is part of what we're saying in terms of perception and how people perceive you and who you are. So if you're someone who comes and you're the life of the party, and all of a sudden now you don't want to be, and you come and you're more subdued and you're more mellow, they're thinking, well, what is wrong with her? Well, there's nothing wrong with you. What you're doing is just changing your behavior because you're choosing to, because you want to be perceived a different way now. So those are things to think about in terms of how we already brand ourselves. And really, branding is this the more savvy way of saying what? That, this is our reputation. And think about it from that perspective. Branding really is the reputation that you want to build about who you are as a professional. And that is what you need to keep in the back of your mind. For those of you who are old school, if it's all about the saying reputation, then say that. But look at these tools and techniques as a way to build that reputation, that perception that you want people to have of you, of who you are. And I will continue to say this throughout these lessons tonight, is talking about who are you as a professional, and how do you want to be perceived, the message you want to get across, and we're going to talk about that. All right, for those of you who are following, we're going to go to slide 7. And slide 7 is talking about define your brand and choose how you want to be perceived. So we've got 8 ways that we're going to talk about in this slide here, talking about defining your brand and choosing it. And what does that mean? So number 1, choose your message and your purpose. What message do you want to convey? And what is the purpose of your message? What are you trying to get across? And making sure that the message and the purpose that you're sharing is true and authentic to who you are. Because that way you can consistently share the message, and the message will consistently be the same because it's coming from an authentic place within you. So that's important to make sure that that message and the purpose is consistent in every aspect. So when you talk about it over and over, or share that message with other people in other venues or other departments, it's going to be the same message because it's coming from a true, authentic place. Number 2, choose the image you want to present. Now, what I mean by image is that we're not just talking about the look, or, in terms of your image piece. We're talking about your communication style, how you treat others, how you get your work done. Looking at those aspects of the image piece. So when they think about you and your work, they can say, yeah, Sherry does good work. She's always nice to me. She speaks to me when I pass by her office, and she's always willing to help. She's a great problem solver. I can always come to her and have her help me with my critical, to help me to think out some critical thinking problems. And so those are the things you want the image to be like. When they think about you, what are they thinking? What are they thinking about? Not, oh, she had on hot pants today. Wasn't she had a dress code? Not that type of thing. But you still want to do good work and be in dress code. You don't want to be wearing hot pants to work and still doing a good job, because all they're going to remember is the hot pants anyway. But you definitely want to make sure that you choose the image you want to present, which in layman's terms means, how do you want to be perceived? And that's how you go about delivering that message, is by how you want to do that. So just thinking about what you want your image to be. Number 3, who is your audience? Think about that for a moment. Who is your audience? Is your audience someone who is, is going to be your leadership team? Is it your coworkers? Is it your peers? And if you're on social media and you're trying to position yourself to be an expert, who's going to be your audience? So for someone who's a project manager and you're looking to position yourself as an expert in this field, project managers are probably going to be your audience. Maybe you're trying to get some contracts as an entrepreneur and you're looking at a specific vendor to be that, then that's your audience. So think about who is your audience and can tailor make your message and your voice to what they are going to be drawn and attracted to. And we're going to talk about that as well. And number 4, create a strategy for your message. You just can't have your message all over the place, because who's going to understand it? So create a strategy for your message. And what that means is that if you're going to create something, be strategic about the verbiage that you're going to use. Be strategic about how it's going to come across, making sure that it's clear and people can understand what you're saying in that statement or in that quote. Or if you're selling something, that they're clear on what the offer is and what it's going to be worth to them. So making sure you're being clear in that. If you're launching a product, make sure that you're being clear on what that product is and what the benefit will be to the consumer that you're trying to draw, or your audience. So making sure that it's very clear, but making sure that also that the brand is consistent to who you are, and that the message is not crisscrossed to where they say, okay, well, is that brand, or that looks like somebody else's brand? Just be very clear in terms of how you want that message to come across. And if you have any doubts about the message, have a friend look at it. Have someone who maybe is an expert in the field that you trust their opinion. Have them look at your message and see if it's going to be clear when they read it, or if it's a photo that you had, a graphic you've had designed, if that photo or that graphic is going to be comprehensive to what you're trying to put together. So making sure they're clear on the message or whatever you're trying to convey that comes across. And if not, continue to work on it until you get the results you're looking for before you launch that out into the world. Number 5, establish your own voice. And I know we've talked about this, but it's very important for you to be authentic in what you share. And that's coming from a true place of your beliefs and what you are conveying. So for example, if you're a recruiter and you're wanting to position yourself as an expert in the field, and you want to give advice on interviewing, and you want to give advice on how to negotiate a salary, or if you have a product for someone who has a product line, how important is it for you to be able to share your own personal experiences with that product or with that type of line of work? If you have to be authentic with that. And the best way to sometimes do that is by sharing your experiences with others. And that does share to your credibility, and because it is your own personal experience, you are saying it in your own voice, which makes it authentic, which makes it real, and it makes it purpose. And believe me, your story will touch someone. And we're not saying be elaborate and go into this 5-hour story, but the more personal experiences you can share based on what you've experienced with the product, the service, or if it's an experience like with an interviewing, with resumes, or your own experience in interviewing, anything that's related to that you can speak to, you are creating your own voice and making sure that what you're sharing is authentic and true, because people can tell when it's fake. And especially when you have to learn how to be consistent in what you're doing, absolutely it's going to come across as being fake, because they know your message was not consistent with them hearing you in a webinar from last week. So just making sure you're being true to that. And number 5 is make an impact to pique interest, and that means being creative with your message, being creative in your own voice about what it is that you're wanting to present or to do when it comes to how you want to make this statement. So for example, if you're someone who is looking to build this reputation in the workplace with your own personal brand because you want to be the go-to person, how are you going to make an impact to pique their interest? Maybe by offering up some expertise to share. Maybe by going in and volunteering to do some extra projects and getting yourself visible. But that way they can say, hey, Sherry knows what she's doing. I think I'm going to go to her and ask her a question about A, B, C, and D. So doing those things to help to increase the visibility, record those things and making sure that you're writing those down in your professional log. That way, when it's time to update that resume, which you should always keep updated anyway, you'll be able to speak to what you've accomplished and how these things will speak to your personal brand. And then we're going to talk about how all these things really need to be in alignment with your social media in just a moment. And then number 7 is, what are you choosing? Excuse me. Sorry. Wrong slide, you guys. Number 7 is select your social media platforms. Okay, this is a big one, and we're going to go into in terms of what's right for you with social media platforms, but pick and choose. Select what social media platforms are going to be right for you. Okay, just because all these social network medias are out there doesn't mean you have to be on all of them, because that is work, right? You don't have to always be on Facebook or Pinterest or Twitter or Meerkat or Periscope or Instagram, or any of those. You don't have to be on all of them. You can pick and choose which ones are going to work for your message and what you're trying to convey, whether it's a service, product, you as the brand. Pick what's going to work best. And if you don't know what those are, maybe go and research. Look at different people who are doing the same thing you're doing, or maybe look at people who have the same type of similar product that you have and see who they're using or what they're using for their social media platforms to see how effective it's being for them. And, no one says to reinvent the wheel, but trust me, everybody is taking something from somebody else to put their own spin on what it is they're doing, right? So for that case, I really think it's important that you understand what is going to work for you and do your research to find out what that is. And the last thing on this one here is execute. Okay. And my whole thing is, we're going to keep it real. Don't talk about it. Just, be about it. So if these are things that you understand about your brand, then by all means, execute that. Find someone who's already very successful at the social media pieces of what they're doing, if it's similar to yours, what you're wanting to do, and then just go in and then start to do those things. There's all kind of infograms and things like that that you can go in. It tells you how often you should post, what types of things you should be posting, and then of course messages that you should be conveying that are going to be authentic and personal, not personal, but authentic to you and what you're wanting to convey. So those are just execute, research, execute, put a plan together, and make it happen. So now we're off to slide number 8, which is just an overview of what we're talking about, which is create your personal branding statement. This is an awesome one. There's a twofold purpose for this personal branding statement. And I use this personal branding statement for my clients for them to put as their objective on their resume. That's what we use it for a lot, is this is your personal branding statement, really is what represents you. So sit down and think about what that means for just a moment. If you're thinking about using social media to brand yourself for professional success, then what personal branding statement is going to represent you and who you are in your industry, and the level that you are in your career and where you want that to take you. So that's something to think about in terms of where that's going to be. So for instance, for me, I'll give you an example for me. I could say, HR professional with 12 and a half years experience in corporate recruiting, now entrepreneur and career coach that maximizes her ability to share her strengths and gifts with people who are looking to achieve professional success. And that's just something I just say off the top of my head. But you kind of get a gist of what I'm saying in terms of you want that statement to convey who you are. You want it to say 3 things. What kind of work what kind of experience you have, how long you've been doing it, what your strengths are, and what you're going to bring to the table. That was 4. But that's important for you to understand, is that you want that personal branding statement to really speak to who you are. You want that if it's going to be on your resume, you want that recruiter to understand that this personal branding statement is going to define who you are, who they're looking at, or who they're interested in. And then also you want that statement to pique their interest to want to know more about you. And so that's a good way to use that personal branding statement as your objective versus having a traditional objective on your resume. So just something to think about for that. But for those of you who are looking at a personal branding statement as something as a mantra or part of your mission statement, as you would be for your business, then your personal branding statement that's something you're going to be talking about all the time, because that's who you are. That's what you're representing for yourself, your brand, your business, or your brand, your profession, and how you're going to go about doing that. So if you're someone who, again, I'll use a project manager. If you're someone who's a project manager and you're looking to be a senior project manager, what's going to be in your personal branding statement that will show that you've got this, and that your next step is going to be this senior project manager, and you've got all the right things to make that happen. And so being confident and being able to talk about that. So even if you're in an interview for someone who is using this from a professional standpoint of working for another company or wanting to go to the next level, if they want you to say, tell me about yourself, that personal branding statement is something you should be able to share verbally, verbatim to them in a way that it sums up who you are and they get that. For someone in your business, you should be using it. Your personal branding statement is something you could be using as your elevator speech. So think about that personal branding statement as an elevator speech for those of you who are out networking, and they say, well, tell me what you do. What is your business? What is your business? And you can kind of also add that in there. Okay, I know that sounds cheesy, but there is a way that you can do that. And you can think about that from an elevator pitch standpoint too. They say, what do you do? So, and I know it sounds crazy, but it can work from a perspective of if they want to know who you are in addition to knowing what you do. So just something to think about from that perspective. All right, number 9. Number 9 is just a statement I wanted to share for the slide number 9, which is, if done right, Professional personal branding does work. Absolutely does work. Now, the trick is this. You need to be consistent, informative, and current, okay? Which means your message needs to be consistent in terms of how often you do it. We know sometimes you don't want to do it every day, and that's fine, but you definitely need to be consistent in when. And the message needs to be informative. It needs to be current. It needs to be something that people can read and relate to. Those things are very important to be able to share. So just something to think about, that if it's done right, your branding can work for you. It can get you noticed. It can get those people talking about what you're doing, and get you in a place to where, or position you for what's next, and using the social media platforms to do that. And so, there is a fine line between these personal posts and your professional posts and what that means. And we're going to talk about those things. All right. The next slide we're going to spend some time on, and we're doing great on time. It's just 7:30, so we're doing great on time. What social media platforms are right for you? And I talked about this a little bit earlier in terms of you don't have to be on all the social media platforms, but I have put some of the major ones on here that people use. And so I want to be able to go through these and make sure that everyone has clarity on the purpose of each individual social media platforms, to make sure you understand their purpose and what they really are designed to do. And then that way you can make a sound decision on which one's going to be right for you. So the first one is LinkedIn. We all know about LinkedIn. We all pretty much understand that LinkedIn is a professional networking site, that it's one that people use to post their professional work history, looking at professional articles, sharing. There's so many different ways you can use it in terms of branding yourself as a professional and getting people to understand who you are and explaining that. And being able to, have your online resume, so to speak, but it's so much more than just that. LinkedIn is also an awesome, fantastic way to make professional connections with people that you may not even saw on the street, may not even get the opportunity to speak to, where you can send them a message via LinkedIn and start making some sort of connection. So LinkedIn is very good for that professional networking piece, but it's a great way to define and make it clear for you to show who you are as a professional. Just from your headlining statement on how you describe yourself, you can actually add media, links, articles. You can actually write articles and share them with the entire LinkedIn network to show your expertise, share your knowledge in terms of branding yourself from that professional perspective. So that's a really powerful tool to use. For those of you who say, well, I've got a LinkedIn page, but I really ain't doing nothing with it. Why aren't you doing something with it? And if you're not, then where is your mindset about really developing yourself in your career? Because I will say, for you job seekers who are looking right now, or who are on this video right now talking, I'm gonna tell you right now, if you submit a resume and a recruiter or a hiring manager pulls your resume, the first place they're gonna go is they're gonna look you up on LinkedIn. And if you ain't got the stellar resume and your LinkedIn profile looks like crap, I'm just gonna keep it real, then they're gonna be like, oh, is she not serious about her professional image? Or is she not serious about, how she's being conveyed? Because LinkedIn is such a huge source. So that's an important part of your branding, is having a very stellar, sharp LinkedIn page that really defines and be clear about who you are as a professional. So for those of you who've been slacking on the LinkedIn page, you need to get up to par with that. And we're going to be having a webinar that's going to talk about the tips and tools and be able to get that up to par. So for those of you who do not see the value in LinkedIn, you need to rethink that. And if you're not familiar with how to get it up to par, we'll be talking about that soon, because it really needs to be an important part of your branding when it comes to your professional success, whether you're an entrepreneur or whether you are working for an employer, doesn't matter. Your LinkedIn, as I'm going to say, needs to be on point. And so that's something for you to think about, because that's where you can share. You can build your client base from LinkedIn, depending on what type of product or service you're offering for your business. For someone who's a professional, you can build your network, because it's very important as a professional. If you are working for an employer, people in your industry need to know who you are. You want to be able to go to your industry events and they say, oh, I know who Sherry Sims is. She works for ABC Company. You don't want to be where, oh, I don't know who Sherry Sims is. She's been working for them for 12 years. You're like, you gotta be kidding me. I've been in this industry 12 years and nobody knows who I am. So you want to be able to use this as a platform to get yourself noticed and recognized, sharing tips and tools about your experiences. Things are going to be relevant that you can share with people in your industry. Best practices are an awesome way to do that. Sharing best practices with people in your industry. You want it to be to where ABC Company is calling you over at DEFG Company, and they're saying, hey, Sherry, you know what? This is what we're doing over here. What are your best practices over there? But doing it with integrity, not we're stealing your best practices and taking them back over here, and we're going to, and it's all, you want to make sure that what you're doing is legal and fair, and you're not under the non-compete, things like that, depending on your company. But you do things. They'll say they'll have negative posts. They share all these things that are not uplifting, up empowering. But this is part of human nature. Facebook has that platform where people can do that. But here's how you alleviate that. If you don't want that in your timeline, don't share it. Block them. Only have things posted into your timeline that are going to be important to, to what you're wanting to convey. So again, I don't have a problem with my Facebook page. I don't have people getting on my Facebook page doing drama and all that. You can control that. So when I hear people say like Facebook is drama, well, really, I'm gonna keep it real. You using that as an excuse, because if your Facebook page is drama, that's because you allowed it to be drama. Facebook can be used to build your brand, build your visibility, show your expertise, sharing tips and tools in your industry, and really use it as a way to get the word out about what you're doing. So that's just one of the things that I just wanted to share about Facebook, that it doesn't have to be that way. Facebook, you can have your personal page, you can have a company page, you can have a group, and you can make your group private. One tip I want to share with you guys with the Facebook page is this. Your Facebook group is going to increase your engagement. Where the Facebook page is great, it's also great to just share these different blogs and posts and things like that. But because Facebook has changed the algorithms, not everybody who's in your timeline is going to see that. So if you want people to see everything that you post, put it into your Facebook group, and that will increase the engagement and the visibility of the message you're trying to share. Just a little tip I wanted to share with you guys. Dakisha Williams, one of our BCWN career mentors, she's the one who shared that tip with me. So kudos and tips. And thank you to Dakisha for that tip, because that's who shared it with me. And it does make a huge difference. So if you're looking to increase your engagement and you want people to see your posts and respond to that, create a group. And that's where you can share your posts and your expertise, your best practices for what you do, and all of those things within your Facebook group. So that's the best way to do that. Still have the page for the front visibility so people can know what your business is, or know what your brand is, know what your profession is if you're sharing all those tips and tools and expertise. But make sure you have that group for the engagement. So Facebook is a really great tool to use, and if you're using it in the right way. And I want you to think about it from this perspective. All these brands, these companies, hospitals, and all these different businesses that you see across the world, they all have a Facebook page. If there was not value in Facebook page, and if it was all about the people who would get on there and be messy, then these companies would not put stock into what they're using it for. So just want you to think about that. Is that it's not about that, it's about who's using it and how you're using it. And you have the power and control to, just like anything else with your brand, how you want that to be perceived. So just making sure, this one, just to share that with you. On to the next one is Twitter. Now, I cannot say enough about Twitter. I'm going to say this. I have met some of the most powerful women in media through Twitter. I have had some awesome introductions through Twitter. So I believe that if you do not have a Twitter account, if you're not using that to make connections, to meet new people, to share your expertise, to share quotes and articles and thoughts, you are missing out, because it's something that can happen in real time. It gets out to thousands of people that follow you on your Twitter feed. For those of you who have a product, if you have a 2-for-1, you can get it out in 2.5 seconds and people see it real time. It's just an awesome way to convey a message to so many people at one time. And it is considered an appropriate thing to do, which is to reach out to someone that you want to connect with on Twitter. So, because each different social network has its norms on how you need to communicate and reach out to people. And with Twitter, to send someone a direct message and say, I'm interested in talking to you, or about something specific, or I love to offer this to you, whatever that case may be, or I have some tips and tools I want to share with you that probably can help you expand, what you're doing in your industry. Whatever the case may be, it's such a norm or an okay thing to be able to reach out to someone on Twitter that way. So for those of you who may be intimidated by the process, I will say when you first start using Twitter, it's kind of a little confusing on how to use it. But once you figure out and get comfortable with how to use Twitter, it is an awesome tool to use for every aspect in terms of what you're trying to do. The one thing that I want to say throughout this whole piece of social media, and I'm going to probably cover it again at the end of this series, is that you want to make sure you're conscious about everything that you say and that you put out there. Do not express and put these things out there with emotion. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. But just be conscious of that. The next thing is Instagram. Now, Instagram is something I had to get used to, you guys, because even though I love visuals and I love photos, I had to figure out what was the purpose of Instagram. It's nothing but photos. But what I understand now is that Instagram is a way to capture your moment right then and there, post it, share some words about it, and put it out there for everyone to see. So it's almost like real time, or can be real time for Twitter as well. But because it's a more of a visual social networking tool that Twitter can be, but Twitter moves so fast that sometimes you may miss your messages and posts, depending on how large your timeline is. Where for Instagram, those visuals are there, so you can always go back and see those. So it really is a great way to capture the moments in the time frame. Again, Instagram may not be the right platform for someone who was a project manager looking to build up their expertise in their field. However, for someone who has a product or a service, and we'll use Shanice, Shanice Bean. Hey, Shanice, because I know you're watching. Shanice has a lip gloss line coming out really soon. Look, I just plugged you, girl. But she has a lip gloss line coming out soon. So using Instagram to show photos of her line would be perfect on Instagram, because it gets out real time, and she gives a link to where they can purchase the product, and bam, there you have it. So just kind of looking at how these different platforms are going to be used for you. Twitter, I think, is good for any platform, because you can, for any business or professional, because there's so many things that you can share in that real time, that Twitter is really for everyone in terms of, your professional branding that you can do. LinkedIn, same way, but you definitely have to be careful what you post on LinkedIn, keeping away from having personal posts and things like that. Going into Pinterest. Pinterest is another one that is almost in a way like Instagram, but not necessarily with all the verbiage. It's a great way to post photos of different things. So what I see a lot of on Pinterest is people who are fashion bloggers will use it for to post styles of clothing, or people who, I see a lot of natural hairstyles that are on Pinterest. So anytime I'm looking, even when I decide to cut my hair off, I went to Pinterest to start looking at natural hairstyles to see, how do I want my hair to be cut? And that's where I went to go and find my next natural hairstyle. And see, I just cut it all off. I know, you guys, I know it's going to grow back for those of you like, oh my gosh, she cut it off. But that's where I went to. But it's another great place to go and get. For me, I use it also to find career tips. I find quotes. I find all great information about what some of my competitors are doing, what they're sharing as far as visuals on there. So Pinterest is another great one to use. And a lot of people who are in arts and crafts, you can get recipes from there, all those types of things that you can do in terms of finance. So Pinterest is really more for that visual person or someone who is wanting to share the how-tos. I think is a great place for that. So Pinterest is not for every audience, but it definitely can be for ones who are looking to share a lot of the photos. Photographers will use a lot of it as well. And then YouTube is another place. There are people who specifically use YouTube for their branding. If they use videos a lot, they will use videos to get across their branding. We use it. BCWN uses it a lot. We use it for our career conversations, or now for your Own Your Career professional development series that we just started tonight, that we use it for that. This is where we house all of our videos for our members to go back, or potential members to go and look at and learn things that they need to know about themselves and their career, or developing as a professional. So, and then, you have people who use, YouTube for various things. Artists use it for, of course, their videos. And then, of course, you have people who use it for how-tos and showing people how to do things. So there's various gamuts of things you can use it for. And it's a great way to build up your visibility. And you can also take those videos and you can replay them back to your network. You can share them on LinkedIn, you can share them on Pinterest and Twitter, wherever you want to. So YouTube is something you really should add to your professional branding repertoire in terms of building your professional success in that way, because that's something that you don't have to say much, because your video is going to do all the work for you, and you can share it with your network. The last one I want to talk about is Google Plus and Tumblr. Tumblr is used a lot for bloggers. So if you're a person who blogs a lot, you definitely can use your Tumblr. If you're someone who wants to blog about specific things that go on in your industry, and that's where you want to be, if you love to write, that's a good place to write, to create a blog for yourself, to really establish a great professional brand for yourself. And then the one thing that I didn't talk about, and we're going to, at the end of this, if we can, even with Google Plus, as we're doing with this Hangout, which is via Google Plus right now, you still can share your articles that you write, the blogs, any information you can share. All that stuff can filter up through your Google Plus, and that also can increase the visibility of the message you're trying to convey. So really, at the end of the day, choosing which social media platform is right for you is important, but you need to research how you want to use these platforms to get your message across in a way that's going to be clean and concise and professional. And just think about what that means, and making sure that it's coming across authentic in your own way, and be consistent. Because once you start the process and people start finding out what you do or what you're sharing, and they want more of that, and if you're just doing it once a month, they're gonna be like, who are they? So you want to make sure that you're being consistent with that. So I know we spent a little bit more time on that slide, but I wanted to share that with you. Next slide is number 11, which is branding tips. And again, I cannot convey enough in terms of being consistent and authentic with your content, and make it a quick read. Don't write a novel. If you're sharing tips, don't make it a half a page. Nobody's reading that. I'm not reading that. Make sure that you keep it a quick read. Make the beginning of your headline the catchiest part to want them to read the rest. So if you do have to write a little more extra to make sure that your message is clear on what it is you're trying to convey, make sure you start off with a strong headline, or the first couple of sentences will intrigue them to want to read more. So just making sure that you do that. And it's nothing wrong with you wanting to be precise and sharing stories, as long as those stories that you're sharing are true, and that the people that you may share those stories with are giving you permission to share that as well. And the one thing I need for you people to understand, when you're looking at this is not about branding yourself, and for your professional success is not just necessarily about wanting to be out there on social media. This is about you creating a platform for yourself where you can gain visibility from the people that are, key players in the industry that you're in, that you want to be able to possibly work for one day. Or if you're building your own business, you know, you want to be able to, you want to be able to draw in that audience that's going to be interested in purchasing your product or your service. So, you know, you need to think about branding from this perspective as a way. It's just a way of you building your career. Branding is a part of building your career, whether you work for someone or not. So you need to learn how to incorporate branding into what you do, in addition to perfecting your craft and at what you do. And your branding can help to speak to that. It can help you build credibility in terms of how you're being perceived as a professional. If you, and even, then don't get me wrong, for you young people who are millennials who are watching tonight, just because you're 25 fresh out of college does not mean that you are not going to be able to build expertise in your area in a short matter of time. You sometimes can come out the gate with skills and strengths that maybe a seasoned professional may not have. And that can build for you to be able to have that credibility because you're coming out the gate with skill sets that are necessary for that job, and you may go right in and excel at that. So it's just think of this branding as something that you can start early in your career and can help you to take off at a faster rate. And for those of you mid-career or people who are looking to change careers, start now, using your branding as your visibility to be able to make that change. And it can happen. And sharing who you are and being authentic in that will be important. All right, the next slide is something I just want to share, and I'm going to read it to you. For those of you who have the slide right in front of you who are watching from our website, it says, you have an opportunity to define how people perceive you within your industry. Carve out your own path and lead others to follow you. And you can do just that. You have the power to create the perception that people have of you in your industry. You can create this reputation or this brand where they're saying, call Sherry over at ABC Company, and she definitely can give you some good tips on how to brand yourself. Or, call Cynthia over at, XYZ Company, and she definitely can give you some tips on how to expand, on that product line that you've been wanting to expand on. She can share some best practices with you and what she's been doing. So being able to use these things, you can carve out your own path and get others to others to follow you in what you're doing. And it's all about positioning yourself right and using these branding tools to create the visibility and the voice, conveying the voice and then what you want them to know about who you are as a professional and what you bring to the table. So the last slide is talks about any questions anybody may have. If you're in the Hangout right now and you are able to type in your question, feel free. For those of you who are, those of you who are watching, if you have questions, I do see a couple of tweets here from some people. It looks like somebody had tweeted, branding is a part of building your career, whether you're a professional or entrepreneur. It looks like somebody tweeted that. Look like we've got quite a few mentions here. Millennials can be expert. Oh, nice quote, you guys, from this. Don't think years of experience is the only qualifier. This is true. Do not think that's it. Just because you're young does not mean you cannot start building a brand for yourself. And it doesn't take years to do that. Not in the way that social media has presented itself for us to be able to, have this brand an accelerated pace. As long as you're being authentic in what you do, absolutely. It looks like quite of these have been shared through our network, so thank you so much for that. And Shanice says she's watching. Shanice, I knew you were watching. I hope I got a plug-in for your line coming up. So this is important for you to understand. Personal or professional, the branding is important. If you do not believe in that, then there's something that you need to consider. You're going to stand still. That's the truth. So you really need to look at what others are doing and see how you can do that to really, and get comfortable with the social media aspect. And if you're not comfortable with that, then just accept the fact that you are going to stay where you are. If not. Because, even employers are going to be looking at the social media and seeing how you're using it. If they see you're using your social media responsibly and you're using it professionally and you're using it to position yourself to be perceived a certain way, that's going to be hugely important for the reputation that you build and how people speak about you when you're not in the room. So it's important for you to see that the branding, it needs to just become a part of what you do. Looks like we've got a question hey Whitney, so glad you could join us. You were doing the Twitter tweets, weren't you, girl? So it looks like question that Whitney has for us is, how essential is a blog to your personal brand? Is it better to do a video blog or a written blog? This is a good question, Whitney. I did speak a little bit about blogging as people using Tumblr for blogging in terms of their expertise. But I think that video and a written blog are both awesome, because you can use a written blog and you can actually use the video blog and put it in, actually embed it into your blog. And that way they can read an article and also have a visual. So of course, having both is great. Now, for someone who really is truly a visual person and they make us think, well, I'm not really an awesome writer, or I really don't know how to put my words or convey my words into, writing them in a message, then maybe video blogging is exactly what you want to do. And if that's all you want to do is video blogging, make sure those videos are very engaging and that they want to come back and see more. So that's what I would say. If you really are more comfortable with the visual aspect and that the video blogging is more of your taste, is make sure that they're engaging and that people are going to come back and see more, more of those. So good question, Whitney. I'm glad you asked that question. So it looks like Courtney mentioned that personal and professional branding is important. Absolutely, Courtney, and we miss you. I thought I would go ahead and share that. It looks like we've also had someone else that tweeted that branding is a part of building your career, whether you're a professional or an entrepreneur. Absolutely, looks like we've got that retweeted, and it is important. It needs to be part of it. When you start thinking about your whole, how you want to go out there and look for your next job, it's not just about your resume. It definitely is about your branding as well. So it's important to do that. And yes, Rachel Taylor, Instagram is best for those with tangibles in their career entrepreneur venture. Definitely use it for such. It doesn't have to be just for sharing your photos when you were out with your personal family stuff. That's great. But tonight is about really changing your mindset about how you use social media and how it can really provide visibility and possibly find your next opportunity as a professional through social media platforms and connecting with people that you may never had access to any otherwise. And so I think that's a great way for you to think about that. And for you millennials, you come out the gate really being tech savvy. So utilize that to your best ability, but make sure that even though you are young, remember who you are now at 20-something is not who you will be at 30-something. So you have to remember your brand is going to change and grow with you. How you convey your message at 20-something is not how you will convey your message as a mid-seasoned professional at 30 or 35. So you have to remember that those things will shift and change. Again, and who knows 10 years where our technology will be like, right? And I didn't even touch on things like Periscope or Meerkat, which is the live, where you can go live with that. But you can use those kind of in the same way and being able to share your expertise in real time or sharing in those experiences. Or if you're somewhere where you're learning something, how are you going to share that message across? So those are just some new things, that new apps that are out there that people are starting to kind of use, and people are still playing around with them and seeing how they want to use them. So if you're one of those who want to do that, play around with Periscope, Meerkat, and see. And then tweet me at BCW Network CEO or Facebook me and let me know how you're using Periscope and some of those other live media streams. And see, I want to know how successful you're being at using those. And then Courtney also, she tweets that if you're just starting out in your career, she said, my tip is the copycat. It's the copycat. And I'm not saying that you got to go and just like steal somebody's stuff, like out blatant, because you don't want any copyright issues and things like that. But everybody always kind of takes something here and there from someone and kind of tweaks it and put their own on it. So just think about that, because we all have people that we emulate or we idolize or we respect them for their professional accomplishments. And so you want to be able to look at what they're doing and say, you know what, I want to do that. And then how are we going to do it? And then take some pieces of what they do and make it your own. You know, you don't have to copy verbatim, but you definitely can create your own voice through that. Instead of, and I hear this all the time. And I remember when I first started the network, I used to hear this, Sherry, don't recreate the wheel. Don't recreate the wheel. I'm like, well, I mean, but I do want to add some things that are going to be part of who I am as a professional and some experiences. And so I had to be clear about what that is. So what I understood was that, okay, here's this organization. I can kind of, mimic some different platforms of how that goes, but then I can also add my elements of what I want to be our key original things that we're sharing for the network. So that to me was important to be able to do. Any other questions? We got some more time. I did say from 7 to 8:30, we can wrap it up. But if we have any other questions, I'll see some more tweets here. In terms of millennials, I do see that someone said that if you decide to do a video blog, be informative and of course engaging. Absolutely, you must be engaging on the video blogs. So it's very important for you to do that. So unless we have any more questions, I'm probably going to wrap it up for tonight. We did do this in about an hour. If you had any more questions. Oh, one thing else I do want to share with you guys is that do not be intimidated by the social media. Now, I will say this because we didn't talk about this before, but for those of you who are working for someone currently, and you say tonight, you know what, Sherry gave me some good tips. I think I do want to start positioning myself to be an expert. I do maybe want to start a blog, or maybe I do want to update my LinkedIn profile, or maybe I want to kind of start branding myself as an expert in my field using these platforms. And maybe you don't want your manager or your boss to know that you're branching out and experimenting with positioning yourself to be in this area. You don't have to share that with them, but make sure that you are clear that if you are just trying to establish yourself as an expert in your field, then that's completely different than just, where you're looking to start a business and it may be a conflict of interest. So just be clear about how it's going to impact your current employer, what you're trying to do. And you don't have to even incorporate them into what you're doing at all in terms of your visibility, but make sure you be clear that what you are trying to do for yourself, that it will not be a conflict of interest with your employer. And I will say this, I'll share this with you guys because part of what I do is part of what we do here at BCWN is to share experiences, right? So I remember specifically working for a company, and I had just started doing speaking engagements and things like that. And I went to tell my manager, I said, you know what, I'm going to come in an hour early because I need to leave an hour early because I have something I'm doing in the evening. I don't have to disclose to her what I'm doing. If I'm communicating with you that I'm coming in early to take off, come out in an hour and leave an hour early, that's fine. The next day I came to work and she asked me, how did your event go? I'm thinking, how does she know about my event? And so I told her it went great. And then she said, well, someone told me about your event. They were like, is this your coworker this is your direct report that works for you? And she's like, yeah, it is. And she said, she thinks she's a guru. And I thought to myself, you know what? That's not going to bother me. You know why it's not going to bother me? Because I know where I'm going and I know what I'm going to do to get there. So even if it tends to be a conflict of interest, or maybe they may find out about something that you're doing outside of the company and you're not representing them, but in a way you are subconsciously, because while you're still working for them, your reputation, whatever you're doing can reflect them. But if it's done in a professional way, it shouldn't be an issue. But just make sure you understand that, make sure there's no conflict of interest or fine line there that says you can't do these types of things outside of your workplace because they may see it as a conflict of interest. But I say that to say about this person who is no longer there, and I'm no longer there, of course, but for her to say something like that, it didn't bother me because I know who I am as a professional, and I knew what my professional goals were, and I knew what I was aiming to achieve for myself. So when you get something like that happens to you, take it with a grain of salt and continue on your path to make your mark in social media and let people see who you are and what you bring to the table so you can achieve the things you want to achieve in your career and build the reputation that you want and not worry about that. Because at the end of the day, their comment, they'll still be talking about that 10 years from now. Guess what? You'll be 10 years ahead doing something else and they're still in the same position. So just remember that. All right. Any other questions before we go? Any other questions? I'm looking here on the Twitter to see if there's any other questions. All right. Well, if we don't have any questions, I am going to wrap it up with a few things I want to share with you first. Thank you for viewing for this is our first professional development series, Google Hangouts. And next time I'm going to see if we can get the slides up on our video before. I know that we shared them on our webpage, but the next time we do it, we want to make sure that we get the slides. The slides are for you guys. But I want to thank you for tuning in to our professional development series called Own Your Career. This has been exciting and very great for us to do. I don't know if we'll keep doing them on Tuesday nights because I know that we have our Google Hangouts every other Wednesday, so we may alternate the weeks and do it that way. But I wanted to just start it out and share about branding. If you want to know more about branding outside of the webinar that I shared tonight, the page will be up with that information, also with the replay, and you can go back and watch this anytime. And then if you have any questions, tweet me at BCW Network CEO, or you can also send me an email at ssims@bcwnetwork.com. Tomorrow night is going to be our career conversation with Dara Fairman, which is our BCWN career mentor, but she's also a time management and prioritization expert. And she's going to be sharing ways to, really, look at your time management and making sure you're being effective in what you do. And I know I'm going to be learning some things because my time management is horrible since I've been working for myself. I'm not even going to lie. So it's going to be awesome tomorrow night on that Google Hangout career conversation with her at 8 p.m. And also, too, remember now, our first annual conference is coming up on August 8th here in Cincinnati, Ohio at the Cintas Center. Passion, Power, and Pursuit is our theme for our conference. It's going to be from 9 to 4, August 8th. We'd love for you guys to come to town and join us. Tickets are already on sale. Registration is open. Please come. We also have a Bring a Friend special rate, too, and that can save you some money for those of you who want to come and bring a friend. So a good way to come in, get to see some of the BCWN crew that you see online. And then also a lot of different speakers, local and some that are already mentors within the network that are going to be participating in the conference as well. So we hope to see you guys at our conference on August 8th. So I want to leave you guys with two things. And the first thing I want to share is this. The life God gave you is larger than the life you've been living. And what that means is that God gives us all special gifts and within us that even if you have an education, they cannot be taken away from you. Use those gifts to become successful. And with that, I'll leave you with my quote, which is know your worth, discover your strength, and work in your purpose. Thank you for tuning in to our first professional career series. We're so glad that we did this. Hoping to have another one in another 2 weeks. I would love to see you on that. But if not, I will see you in the career conversation tomorrow. Have a good night, everyone. Bye.